I'm going to be using a stencil a little bit just to create some pattern, a little bit of texture in the background. And a little bit about alcohol ink, if you don't know, if you haven't used it before, it's a dye, basically. So it doesn't have pigment in it, it's a dye. So it's very transparent. So when you're using a black substrate, anything dark, you're going to have to add white with it to get it to show up on a black background, because otherwise the ink just disappears into the black. So this is just the kind of canned air that you would use to blow off your keyboard to clean it. I'm going to use that to blow out the ink. All right, so I'm going to start with this stencil, and there are regular alcohol inks like this, and then there are alcohol inks that are called alcohol pearls, and the pearls have a little shimmery pigment added to them. So I'm going to use this as my background. I've got two different greens here. One is called Elixir, and one is called Sublime. All right, I'm going to use a little makeup wedge like this. And I'm just going to put some of this green. That was the darker green. And then this is a lighter one. And like I mentioned, when you're using black, you've got to add a little bit of white. So this is called Snow Cap, and this is an alcoholic mixative. And I'm going to use this stencil to just kind of dab around and create a little bit of texture in the background. And I've also got some gold here. I'm going to put some of this down. All right, so I'm just kind of putting it sort of around the outside edges here. And a lot of what I'm putting down now, you're not going to be able to see a lot of it. It's going to show through what I do, like in the background, but a lot of it is going to kind of fade away. What I want to do is have some of this texture show up behind my petals that I'm going to blow out. So let me move on to my floral here. This is Poppyfield. This is a really pretty red. And I'm going to put a little bit of this down on my paper. And you see now I didn't add any white to that, so it's just kind of disappearing back there. And once it's dry, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this, but once it's dry, it's really hard to see it. But what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use a little bit of this color to kind of create some really light, transparent white petals. But this red is going to kind of flow into it a little bit. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm drying it for mostly, but it's still going to be a little bit wet. If I tilt the paper, maybe you can see how it's still a little bit wet there because it's still shiny. All right, then I'm going to use this white. I'm going to put it right along the edge. And then this is just alcohol, 91% alcohol. And I'm just going to give that a little there. So what I'm trying to do is just create some very transparent sort of petals. All right, send some more white. So the more white you add, the more opaque you can make your petals. So that time I added a little bit more so you could see like these petals are not quite as transparent as that because I put down a little bit more white that time. So let me come over here. I'm just going to go all the way around with this. And I'm just giving it a little short burst of air. I usually go around the edges with the straw and sort of shape it up a little bit. And see, it's carrying a little bit of that red through. The more alcohol you put down, the more of that color you're going to get to flow through. And it's just really, kind of an experiment because every time it could look a little bit different. And again, that's the thing about alcohol, because you can't totally control it, but you can learn to control it enough to get something that you're, like a petal shape. All right, just that. And I'm putting down a pretty good puddle of alcohol. And this is just 91% isopropyl alcohol. This just helps the ink to move a little bit. this canned air, it'll have a tendency to freeze up, get really, really cold. The one thing you don't want to do is ever shake this up, and you don't want to lean it on its side completely. You want to keep it as upright as possible, at least say 45 degrees off the table. So if you lean it all the way over, it'll start to spray out that liquid on the inside. So you just try to keep it as upright as you can. I'm going to put another petal right here. And I just use little short bursts of air. If you use those really long streams of air with this canned air, it'll do the same thing. It'll freeze up. Let's do a little bit more right here. So that background that I put down is coming through the petals, which is what I was hoping for. So it's not, it's back there. It just kind of adds a little bit of interest to the painting. And now I'm trying to decide, do I want to put any more layers in here? You can keep layering these petals. You could go around and around, and the more layers you add, the more opaque these petals are going to become. So if you wanted to, I might add one more right here. But if you wanted something a little bit more opaque, just keep going around and adding more petals on top. Do a little bit more right here. I'm going to go with it, I think, like this, or maybe like that. So I think for this one, just because the holidays are coming up, I'm going to make this sort of a poinsettia inspired center, just with those colors that you would see in a poinsettia, the red, the green, and the yellow. And it's already got the red back there. I'm going to start adding a little bit of green in the center. So I'm just putting my alcohol ink. This is Everglades. This is a really pretty green. I'll put that in my palette, and I need to add some white to it because we're working on black, so I want that to show up. All right, so let me mix that up really well, and I'm just going to start putting some of this green in here. And I'm not trying to make this super realistic. I'm keeping it pretty loose because this is kind of a loose design anyway, so I'm going to kind of keep it on the looser side. All right, so I got a little green in there. I'm going to dry it a little bit. And now let's put down a little yellow. And I know that looks kind of dark. It's not quite as dark as it looks on camera. All right, so this is yellow. This is called Sunshine Yellow. And I've got some white mixed in there. I'm just mixing that up a little bit. Start putting a little bit of that in there. And there's, remember that red I put down in the background before I started? But that's going to start coming through because these colors tend to mix with each other. They'll take on whatever color is behind them. So that red will start popping through a little bit when you start adding more colors. All right, so let me put down a little bit of white. And when you put down white in the center, it's going to take on the color that's behind it. These are little micro tools, can be used for makeup or dental tools, but we use them for alcohol ink a lot because they're like little tiny brushes. They have little foam on the end of them, and they're great for laying down little bits of alcohol ink. And I've kind of lost my yellow in there, so I'm going to get back and add some of that in a second. And I'm just gonna make it really loose. I don't mind going outside of the center a little bit and creating some energy out there. If I can put some more yellow in. And I usually just go back and forth and just add my colors and, where I see them, where I see it needed. I play with the centers a whole lot just because um, it takes me a while to kind of get them the way I like them. So this is not, really a realistic poinsettia, but I like to think about flowers as my inspiration and then just kind of let that kind of lead the way for the painting, but it doesn't necessarily have to turn out looking like that. But I think that's about it. Sometimes I'll scratch into the petals a little bit because poinsettia petals are really leaves. They have the veins. So sometimes I'll kind of scratch into that. And when the paint is still a little bit wet, it works better. See, right now it's really dry, but you can still get a little bit of that idea. But you could definitely like scratch in. That one, I had a little bit of ink on it. And I'm going to go and just add a little bit more red back in here.